Definitely hit us up. Critiques, comments, concerns, whatever. Like, you guys hear us reporting certain things. You're like, wait, what was that? Like, go ahead and ask us about that along the way. But let's dive right into it, guys, because the big news of the week leading up to the stadium practice was the fact that the Raiders released their first unofficial depth chart. Now, keyword unofficial, so take it with a grain of salt. But if you guys have been following along at training camp and kind of what we've talked about on the show, there's not a ton of surprises. But having said that, were there a few things that did stand out to you from the initial depth chart there, Ryan? We'll start with you.
I think it goes. Let's talk about the offensive line position because we see Trey Zune as that backup right tackle, and Caleb Rogers as the second string left guard, which is interesting to me because even though Rogers has had a few reps at left guard during practice, the majority of his work has been at right guard, and he's been alternating. Actually, he's been alternating first team reps for about a week or so with Jackson Powers Johnson, and then Trey Zune. The team, when they drafted him, they believe he's best suited for the interior, but they think if needed, he can probably provide some depth at offensive tackle. But like their main focus for him is either playing a guard or a center. We've seen that a lot lately with him playing. Last two practices has been exclusively a center, and we've also seen him play a lot at right guard as well. So those are two spots right there that stuck out.
That was what stuck out the most to me right off the bat, too, because I expected to see them have Trey Zune in there as the backup center. I'm sure a lot of fans were like, what the hell, Jordan Meredith, our backup center? Like, because obviously last year, that experiment, a lot of people didn't like it.
It didn't work out
I know
for him,
you
man.
didn't. Yeah. So, like, that's one. But I think kind of like, if, God forbid, Linderbaum were to go down, I would imagine their number one option as the primary backup would very likely be Trey Zune. But again, you could say that about all five spots along the offensive line, which is great about having a Swiss Army knife like that. TJ, I'm curious for you, man. Like, when it came out, what was that jumped out to you in terms of who was where, or maybe who was left off on the starters list or something like that?
I guess one of them is one of the positions I've been looking forward to. I think going into the preseason is definitely the wide receiver position, right? Of course, we know our wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2, but seeing Jack Bech as the wide receiver 3 right out the gate over somebody like Malik Benson, who I thought, I think I've seen you guys talk about him. I've seen him at camp, and he seems to be the best guy there over Jack Bech and even Dante and all those other guys. So to see Jack Bech starting as the wide receiver 3 as for now, like, was kind of surprising to me, though. But
I didn't expect
but maybe
either.
they want to go with the second year guy and just see what he got. I guess the silver lining, right, is like this is the depth chart going into the Arizona Cardinals game, right? Basically, so that means at least we'll get to see Malik Moore with Fernando and that with running with the twos, if that's how it plays out.
Yeah, I mean, he's been kind of working up and down, with the ones, the twos, even the threes early on in camp. I mean, but Ryan, lately it's just been the ones and twos, right? If memory serves me right, like, I don't think I've seen him working with the threes anymore.
Yeah, it's been a lot of ones and twos, especially like he's either catching passes from Kirk Cousins, Fernando Mendoza. That's about it so far.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it like that's where he's been at. And I think also too at the same time they've had to use him at either playing with the ones or twos because Dante Thornton has been out for I believe the last 3.5 or 4 practices. So you kind of he kind of has to fill that void while Dante is sidelined. But when you look at the depth chart, I know it's like surprising that why Malik Benson is not over Jack Bech, because when you look at his performance in practice, he should be over Jack Bech. But like you look at it, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think there's a single rookie that's with the first team.
Yeah,
so
I noticed that. Yeah,
and I go back to my days covering the Broncos. I remember Sean Payton would have like rookies like at the bottom of the depth chart when this initial unofficial when this comes out before preseason games. So you have to take it from a grain of salt. It could be I think part of it is kind of telling of what we could potentially see moving forward. At the same time, it could be coach's way of saying these guys have not earned their role yet because and I think it'd be a little bit of both, but it goes back to don't take it for a grain of salt because I do think Malik Benson at the moment, and that can change starting tomorrow, is your wide receiver 3. At the same time, he is still a rookie. And I think, this organization wants to, I think all the rookies, they want to make sure that like, hey, it's not over yet. You still have to work your way in terms of earning a spot.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
look at when they opened up things in the offseason, in OTAs when the whole team was together and with mini camp as well. Like they had Fernando working with the threes, right? So like very much so trying to make these guys like quote unquote earn it, like making them
Yeah.
feel like, hey, you're a rookie, you haven't earned anything yet. So I think that's part of it for sure. And again, too, I think with the Jack Besh thing, like, and just the way that they've got it structured in general, I mean, they're going to run 11 personnel, obviously. That's going to be a part of this offense, but they're going to be in so much 12, 21, 13 even. Like, I wonder how many 11 personnel sets we're going to see, how many 3 wide receiver sets we will actually see. Like, I don't think it's necessarily going to be at the rate that maybe some fans think. I think they're going to be rolling through a lot of those bigger, heavier sets a lot more. So it's like, I think it'll be like whatever flavor they're trying to go for in terms of who that third wide receiver is. Are they looking for more of the versatility or more of like the power type set with a Jack Besh, who's a bigger guy who can, play in the slot, almost like a power slot type of guy. I think that's what's going to be really interesting to watch, to see how they deploy that in terms of like Jack Besh versus Malik Benson as it all kind of plays out. And then again, when Dante Thornton Jr. gets healthy, where he factors into all of that. We talked about it before on the last show that he's kind of on the outside looking in. Other than that, yeah, defensively, like there wasn't really any surprises. I know some people, when I put it out there, the depth chart, like some people were saying like, oh, Tonka Hemingway listed as a starter. That's not surprising anybody that's been around camp or seen much of it, just because he's been working exclusively with the ones since training camp kicked off. Like that kid very much looks like he's primed for a big role, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. It goes, but actually, it goes all the way back to OTAs and mandatory minicamp. Even during those practices, he's been working exclusively with the first team. Like this,
That's true.
this
Yeah.
is you can tell the coaching staff really believes that he's going to make a jump in year 2, and based on what we have seen, there's some days they're in pads and some days they're not, and no matter what, he still figure out a way to make plays, whether in the pass game or the run game. Now we're just hoping that translates. And in the actual game. So that if there's someone you want to keep an eye on tomorrow against the Cardinals, it'll be one of those guys. Will be Tonka Hemingway, because he's really looked good. He has looked the part as someone who can be a starter in this defensive front. But now it's like now it comes to the actual game. This is where it really matters, and this is where Tonka has a true has a case to really solidify his role. And so that's why my eyes are really going to be on Tonka Hemingway tomorrow.
Yeah, I think the ripple effect with that too is kind of interesting. Like, because if Tonka ends up being like a dude, not just a starter, but like a really quality player for this team, think about what that does for their depth, behind him in terms of Jonah Luulu, Thomas Booker the fourth, even JJ Pegues as well, the way that he can be rotated in. That just gives you so much quality depth of guys that have played a decent amount of football over the years, right? Like that ripple effect to me is super important if he ends up being that guy, to be able to add those guys in as fresh rushers as the game rolls on.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think just having that depth is huge, especially for the length of the season, right? Because that's going to be the most important thing, is not having like, top starters, but also having the guys that are going to back up those guys in case people get banged up. And I think out of all the I'm more confident in the defensive line than any of the other position groups, because we still got to see how they all pan out. But